staff at Bethel Grove. And then in 2014, after many visits to Uganda and time with Andrew and prayer, it became clear that it was time to put more investment with Andrew and others in Uganda and in other places to serve Christ and encourage and equip pastors. And so along the way, in June 2014, we finished at Bethel Grove, not knowing how everything would go, but God led us to an organization in Colorado Springs called New Horizons Foundation. And get this, their byline is taking your vision to the world. Huh? And God opened that up to be a resource for us as we were moving forward. And so we developed partnerships for training pastors. And along the way, Joyce had so much impact in the lives of so many people. And she's going to just say a few things about our family and a lot of other things.
Not that many things. It's really good to be here. And, you know, they say your home is where your heart is. This is home. You guys are in our hearts. And you've taken a piece of us with you. So we just really feel at home here, and thank you for being that for us. This is a special place. This is a special place, and God has really been at work here, and He's working here now, and we can't wait to see what He's going to continue to do through you, His people, as you move on. So, moving on was what Dave and I did, and we were in Ithaca. We started working, going to Africa, and we kind of realized that we could do this anywhere we wanted to, and we kind of said to our son, well, maybe someday we'll move down near you. Well, a couple years later, he said, we need to have an intervention. When are you coming? And so we moved down to Ithaca so that we could be near them, and from Ithaca to Mechanicsburg to take care of kids. And so this is our family now. And for those of you who remember Matt, he left and he wasn't even 2. So he did grow quite a bit since you've seen him. So that's Matt and Dave and I, and our 2 grandchildren. Reagan is 7 and Cole is 4, and that's Ashley. So Matt grew up. He always wanted to be a policeman since he was a little kid. And now he works for the state of Pennsylvania. He's seconded to the U.S. Marshals on the task force. So you really don't want to meet Matt in full regalia. Ashley works at Messiah University, and she is in charge of career development there. She runs the office. So, you know, our goal to do that was we felt really called that as we're getting older, it was time for us to invest in those 2 little ones that are sitting on the sofa. And that, you know, one generation is supposed to be passing on to the next generation. So I think there's...
I did it.
Oh, you did. They keep us busy. Reagan loves art. She's a little artist. And Cole is active and keeps me active as well. We take care of them a couple days a week. And so we're really involved in their lives and have really enjoyed being with the kids. So I didn't go to Uganda right away because I was still working when Dave started to go. My first trip to Uganda was to do a medical mission trip. I didn't go with Dave to Uganda. And then we went together. And this is a picture of us in a place called Oyam. And it was a special place for me. What we were doing is we decided that it was all about relationships. And it was really important to visit pastors who we were training to be trainers in their homes and in their churches. And we had to travel far to get there. So when Acts 1 tells us that you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the world, I found out where that is. It is really where sometimes I felt when we were going on these trips. In this particular place, we are standing in front of a church with pastors. That's the church behind us. And I'll never forget, because we walked into the church, and it's a hut, and we sat down, and Andrew looked at me and he said, "Joyce, would you pray?" And one of two people, "Would you pray?" And we were standing there, and I was waiting for my turn to pray, and I almost couldn't do it, because all of a sudden a thought came flooding back to my mind, and I was like just overwhelmed. And the thought was this: when I was a little girl, our church, just like you, had mission conferences every single year. And as a young person, younger than these guys, you guys at the table, I went to mission conferences. And I remember a speaker getting up and saying, "How many of you would be willing to be a missionary? How many of you would be willing to go to Africa?" Guess who stood up? Me. And I stood in that church, and I was over 65. And that vision was fulfilled that day. I was standing in Africa, and I never dreamt that I would actually be there. And so as we've talked about, don't be ashamed of the gospel. You don't know where God's going to send you. And it could be your Jerusalem, right here, your Judea, your Samaria. And he may call some of you to the uttermost parts of the earth. And it may not be until you're older that you'll get there in one way or another. So I just have appreciated that God has done that, and I wanted to just share this verse because this verse has meant a lot to me as I've traveled through life. It says, "Listen to me, you descendants of Jacob, all the remnant of the people of Israel, you whom I have upheld since your birth, and carried you since you were born, even to your old age and gray hairs. I am he who will sustain you. I have made you, and I will carry you." And so no matter who you are here, whether it's from birth, that you're progressing through your life, God is with you. He's going to be with you all the way through. He's going to sustain us, each one of us, to our old age. So don't give up. Keep going and fulfill what God has called for you. And it's to be not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ as you walk through this world. Amen.
And so you can have a little sense that we are thrilled to be partners with Andrew, Mwenge, Daudi, and Kugwa, and hundreds of other people in Uganda. I am glad, Joyce, that you talked about gray hair. And here's my thought. Every day I wake up and there's no hair up here, but it's somewhere on the pillow. It says, right, Matt? Yeah. God knows the number of hairs on our head. I'm really grateful for that, because I think he's thinking of us, Matt.
75.
Yeah. So it's a privilege to be back here, and as Joyce said, we count this as our home, really, in so many ways. Okay. Now I introduce to you Andrew Mwenge. He's pastor of Kampala Baptist Church. We got connected in 2004 as one of our missionaries introduced us when Andrew came to the United States on a visit. And he came to Ithaca, and we became fast friends. And then he came back in with Edith, his wife, in 2006. And then we began a conversation that led Bethel Grove Bible Church and Kampala Baptist Church into a partnership for the gospel. And so individuals would go, as Joyce did with many others, to Medical Missions Week, which out of 1 week out of the year, 3,000 Ugandans in Kampala would come to the church that Andrew had established with their vision to touch the community where they are. And so with medical resources provided and doctors, 500, 700 people would walk through the doors each day. And he might mention something about that. So our partnership was in sharing together. We took a youth group over, but more and more we began to share the heart for working and equipping with pastors in the least resourced areas of Uganda. So I introduce to you my dear friend, a gift from God. For me, I hope it's a gift from God for you. And this guy's awesome. You have a lot of questions, and I encourage you to think about them and ask them as he talks tonight. All right.
Thank you very much. I tend to talk with my hands, so I better put this microphone down. It's been a privilege to be here. I have felt very welcome. We really appreciate Peter and Diane, and the attention we've received here. We feel like VIPs. Thank you very much for your welcome. And we just want to thank God for you. They told you my name is Andrew Mwenge. Mwenge is not a very common name in my country because Mwenge means beer. So when I introduce myself in schools and I'm speaking to young people, they wonder how a pastor can be called beer. But anyway, that's my name. I have a wife and two boys and 4 girls. And my daughter recently married a few years ago and has two children, so we have 2 grandchildren, which in my culture, once you have grandchildren and they start calling you grandpa, grandma, you really can't say you're young. So I'm way up there. And so that's a little bit about me. My daughter now is one of our staff at the church, recently joined the church as a children's worker. And so we thank God for her gifts as well. And thank God for the relationship that we have had with Dave and Joyce through the years. We've been able to do a lot of things together. And it's difficult to summarize in this meeting what that is about. So I just thought 4 pictures that will help you appreciate what we are dealing with. Hopefully they will communicate. First one is really, for me personally, one of gratitude. I grew up in a polygamous home. My father had 5 wives at the peak of his life. And the woman I had my father's official wife, and my mother was the second wife, actually brought into the home with the agreement of the first wife. After the second wife, my father didn't consult, he just kept adding. And so at one point, 3 of those wives were in one home. So that's the environment I grew up in for the first probably 15 years of my life. In a polygamous home with many children. We have 23 of us. Now, at that point, growing up, why gratitude is because when I finished what you call elementary school, we call primary school in Uganda, I moved into the city to go to secondary school, what you call, I think, high school. So while in secondary school, in the residence where I was staying, a missionary from the US, from Virginia, actually was from Ohio in those days, he lives in Virginia now, came to live right on the edge of the university residences staff residences where I was staying. And so on one day, he came through, walking through the homes and inviting young people to his house to play football on Sunday. Now, in those days, it is not so these days, but in those days, there was really not much to do for any young people on a Sunday afternoon, because there was, in Uganda at that point, there was one TV station, and it opened at 6 and closed at 10. So really, Sunday afternoon was a very boring time. So we went to this, we call in Uganda, the whites are called Muzungu. We went to this Muzungu's home every Sunday evening and played football.
Soccer.
Which again is so, yes, it's too many different ones. So we played soccer on Sunday evenings, and when we were done, he would open his Bible and read a simple passage and share a biblical truth, and then we would go home. After a few months, he said he wanted to start a Bible study, and those who wanted to come would come. So on Tuesday evening, we would go for Bible study. One of the attractions there was cookies and Kool-Aid for a young pastor. So, and so we went every Tuesday evening to study the scriptures. He went through the Gospel of John for a long time. And one of the things that struck me as we were going through the Gospel of John was that Jesus was presented in different pictures. And every time Jesus is presented, people made a choice about him. In chapter 1, he's presented as the Word and as the light. And he has come into the world, and some people did receive him, and he gave them the right to become children of God. Other people didn't receive him. And chapter 3, he's the light, and some people prefer choose the darkness. They refuse to come to the light. And then you have these images in the Gospel of John that tell you who Jesus is and the people's response to them. So I began to question myself where I stood on that issue. I'd grown up in an Anglican church, or the Episcopal church as you call it. I was baptized as a child. I was confirmed as a teenager, but really had never really made a decision for Christ. So studying the Gospel of John began to challenge me to think about where I stood. I just remember one Tuesday, I didn't even go to school because I was under so much conviction. I knew that evening I had to make a decision. And so that evening I did, at the end of the Bible study, I was in this Bible study for an hour, literally upset, because I kept thinking, should I not? And because I had studied the Bible for so long, for some time, with this missionary couple, it had become clear that coming to Christ was going to be a price. Growing up in a polygamous home, I had a lot of premarital relationships, and that I knew that that's one of the things I'd have to give up. So that Tuesday night, at the end of the Bible study, I said that I need to accept Christ. And I did. That really was the turning point in my life. And so I would pick up, 2 weeks later, I went and bought a ball. And I went to the primary school in the neighborhood and played with the boys, and then I would open my Bible and read with them the little that I had come to know. And so that really was the beginning of my involvement in ministry. The reason this is gratitude for me is that I was the craziest of all my brothers and sisters. And my mother had 9 children. 5 of them died of AIDS. I would have been one of them. I probably have been the first one to go. It wasn't for that turning point that happened in my life because of the gospel that I was introduced to. So I really come to a church meeting like this with a lot of gratitude, because I've sensed a church that has eyes beyond its walls. And so I begin with gratitude. Thank you. Second thing is to just highlight for you why we have been involved together in this task of training, of equipping other church leaders. In Uganda, you have at the tip a small group of Christian leaders who have some form of a degree or diploma or certificate. You have another group of people who I call functionally literate. In their normal life, they function with pen and paper. They've been to school, they've probably been to high school, and there are a lot of people like that in the ministry. And when the seminaries are recruiting, they tend to take people in that category of Christian leaders. But most of the evangelical church in Uganda is led by people in the bottom line, who you call functionally illiterate. They can read, they can write, but in their normal day-to-day life, they don't function with pen and paper. They can read the Bible in their local language. They probably the only two don't even have a pastor's office. As you saw the church, it doesn't have a pastor's office. The only book that was to study by their bedside is really the Bible in their local language. And those are the majority of our pastors in the villages. When seminaries are looking for people to train, they get them in the upper section. And when the NGOs like World Vision are looking for workers, they get them from that group. When you train them, some of them are taken by that world, and they are only working in the church part-time. The people who are really at it are the people in the bottom line. Now, there are implications for work with that group of people. You have to figure out how to communicate to them in ways that are basic. So that's why Dave and I become a team. He has a lot of time invested in developing materials and teaching a well-researched work. And then I get them to break it down to the levels at which they can understand. And when we train people, again challenging them to break it down to that level. So one of our commitments, or one of my commitments, and anybody who wants to participate in what we're doing, is to challenge them to think, first of all, that group of people who not many people are targeting. What that means, though, is that you are going to have to travel where they are. You're going to do a lot of the training in those grass-search places. That you're going to go where they are, rather than bring them in the city in a more polished environment. The second picture that impacts how we are focusing ministry is the population demographics. When you look at the Ugandan population, you have a very young age. 56% are below 18. And that's the picture of the Ugandan population. That's the picture of your population. Okay? You have a lot of people who are much older. And in Uganda, we have a lot of young people in the church. And so to therefore think about the future of the church is to think about how to equip the young people for ministry in the coming, really beginning now. And so therefore one of the things we do is our focus on emerging leaders. In other words, getting the older folk in the church, the pastors, to think who takes over when I am gone. The church tends to be dominated, the leadership tends to be dominated by the older, and sometimes not enough thought given to preparing the generation that takes over. So we have thought about really thinking about the emerging leaders. So that's the third picture, is really the helping the older people think who takes over from me. How do you do ministry with the second generation in mind? I am sure you do have that challenge in a slightly different way. In fact, I was thinking about the American church, because I've had a privilege of visiting a number of churches through the years. And I'd like to commend you, because at least in this meeting, we have a table where there are young people. Because in many churches, in a meeting like this, it's not common to find that table. Now, one of the passages that has struck me through the years is a passage in Judges chapter 2, which simply, Joshua is coming to the end of his life. And the text says, after that whole generation that had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done to Israel. Then the Israel did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped the various gods of the people around them. They aroused the Lord's anger because they forsook him and served the Baal and the Ashtoreth. In his anger against Israel, the Lord gave them into the hands of the raiders who plundered them. He sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. That you had a generation, Joshua generation, who had seen what God had done, who had seen God's hand fight for them, and after that generation passed, for some reason, they were not able to pass that to the next generation. And so you and I, us, have the same challenge in the different packages. Yours is a church that is losing its grip on the young people. Ours is a church that is full of young people that have no one to disciple them and to prepare them for their generation. And we both have the same challenge in a different package. And we have to, first of all, be aware of that reality. Second, we have to seek to understand that the world that the young people are dealing with in this day, because it's a different world. My kids are so, you ask them something, and they quickly go to their phone, and they give you an answer. It's right there. Uncle Google has the answers for them. Now, how many questions are my children asking for from Uncle Google? And what kind of answers is Uncle Google giving my children? And so the reality is different. And we have to think about it. And we have to look for opportunities to communicate our values to them in their world, and be part of shaping their world, which has been really taken out of our hands by Uncle Google. But also make this really a prayer agenda, because some of this is out of our hands. I appreciate many of the grandfathers I hear in this culture who are deliberately investing in their grandchildren, because it's part of the solution. But as Joyce said, to also not give up, because sometimes it's a little frustrating. So that sort of defines why we are doing what we are doing. We have had the privilege to work with pastors to equip them at their level. We've had the privilege of trying to envision the pastors to think about the next generation and come up and therefore raise what we call emerging leaders and be part of the process of equipping them. We've also had the privilege of trying to extend ourselves by training trainers of trainers. We have a couple of videos that would give you some visual picture of what this looks like. So, for now,